You'll probably have a hard time looking for rental housing in Metro Vancouver because less than 1% of the stock is available. It's a similar story in Toronto, where the rental vacancy rate is 1.3%. But that's not the only problem. If you're looking for purpose-built rental housing, this is mostly what you have to choose from.
If you look actually at the entire rental stock across Canada, about 45 to 65% of the rental housing stock is these three-story walk-ups. So my name is Brian Clifford. I'm a policy manager with BC Nonprofit Housing Association. So a big reason why we have a lot of this rental housing is because of government programs that help to incentivize it. Two programs in particular. These were the Multiple Unit Rental Housing Building Scheme, or MURB for short, as well as the Assisted Rental Housing Program. So in 1984, all programs that were stimulating rental housing were canceled by the federal government. There has been a lot of housing need as a result. So one of the barriers that we see to the construction of new purpose-built rental are land costs. Land costs have skyrocketed across Metro Vancouver and many parts of the province. Also, construction costs continue to rise.
What I've seen is very high demand in the city right now for market residential on rapid transit station sites. Even within my own office, most of my staff that are millennials in their 30s, 20s and 30s, most people don't have cars anymore in the city. They prefer to ride their bike or take transit. So the demand, even for not just rental, but market units, is quite high. So there's that competition. And I think often the market competition will beat out the rental competition on those prime transit-oriented sites.
But it just so happened that the owners of a house on King Edward and Cambie wanted to build rental. And so they called up Arno to design a rare, all-rental building on a busy Vancouver corner.
Because of the large lot dimensions, the 6-story building form works quite well on this site. Many of the unit types are 1 and 2 bedroom, some 3-bedroom units. We're looking at introducing some flexible partitioning. If you slide a partition off, you could create a sleeping area, or if you open up the partition, it becomes part of a larger living space. It gives particular apartment user the ability to kind of set up the space the way they want to.
Those are good tips for the inside, but how do you bring together density, amenities, and a sense of community to a rental building? We ask someone who's been building in the city for a long time.
I'm Cheng. I'm an architect. I live in Vancouver. Some of the projects people may know about is Shangri-La, Fairmont Pacific Rim, Shore Tower, and places like that. Probably the Nordstrom as well. When I first moved to Vancouver in the 70s, like every new immigrant, I rented a high-rise down by Stanley Park. And for the 3 years I've been there, I've never met anybody. You see them in the elevator, but there's no opportunity to other than say hello, so that's why it intrigued us when we do a higher density housing. How do we encourage people to meet? How do we provide the social spaces that people would interact? Just like a single family house, when you sit on a porch, people see you, they can say hello and they'll stop and talk. But in a high density high rise, there's very little of that space.
While James Cheng is known for a lot of Vancouver's famous skyscrapers, you probably didn't know he was behind this 97-unit rental project on top of a Linden Drugs, built in 2002.
A project like this is actually very rare. We all know Victoria Drive and 41st is a very busy corner, but the community is just in transition. So there's a lot of single-family houses, but not a lot of mixed uses in this neighborhood. So to introduce rental and apartment living, that is a needed amenity for the neighborhood. The design is a real challenge because 41st is a very busy street and Victoria is also very busy. And we have a major anchor like a Linden Drugs and we know the traffic's going to be insane. So to put a residential community on top of that is a real challenge. So the idea that we came up with is to create a sanctuary within the project. And that's why we have a courtyard in the middle. So for the residents, once they're in the courtyard, all the noises are basically cut out. The unit mix of this project is quite interesting because we want to accommodate a wide range of people. So townhomes is more for families, and then for the senior people or single people, we do have some apartments that are flats because not everybody wants to live in a high rise. And there's something about being very neighborly and community-like if you could actually be close to the ground and share the interface with people.
With such need for rental in big Canadian cities, is it a hopeful time? Well, some municipalities are taking action. Cities like Vancouver and New Westminster have been cranking out incentive programs, and BC and the federal government have new programs with money specifically for new rental.
I think that this is a hopeful time, certainly. There's renewed interest, and for the first time in a generation, we've seen the municipal, provincial, and federal levels of government at the table and taking it seriously. Rents are rising. We're seeing that mortgage rates have come down, and there's an interest, I think, from the private sector to engage in building again.